In this recorded tutorial, I'm going to demonstrate the processes that I've created instructions for today's workshop. So in today's workshop, we are going to use some of Adobe Illustrator's tools, in particular the Shape tool, to create useful icons. So once we've mastered this process, we can apply it to lots of different icon types. The example workshops we have are to create a magnifying glass and to create a light bulb. They may seem odd choices, but the magnifying glass is fairly universal as a symbol for searching, discovery, looking, inquiring. So this can be a good icon to use against any characteristics involved in, perhaps looking for information on the internet, searching, researching, etc. The light bulb icon, again, is universally kind of recognized as a symbol for ideas or for innovation or coming up with new things. So they can both be quite useful to demonstrate points. So I'm just going to take you through the Illustrator, the steps that we need to go through in Illustrator to create the magnifying glass. So let's launch Illustrator together, as I'd like to walk you through creating your workspace to make sure that we're all on the same page so people aren't getting stuck. Now I'm just going to do this tutorial for Mac, and then I will do another one for Windows. So using Illustrator for Mac, you have the option to create new, and we just want to make sure that we're working in web so that we get the color mode RGB. Color mode CMYK is for print. Color mode RGB is the color mode for digital. We'll go into more detail about color modes when we look at color theory and color psychology in coming weeks. As last week, we're going to change the size of our artboard, and I'm just going to make it a nice straightforward square again, 1000 by 1000 pixels. And at this point, if you want to, you can name your document. You can always name it later on as well. Okay, and then click Create when you're ready. So now we have our artboard ready. Again, make sure that you're in Essentials Classic mode. Often if you're opening Illustrator for the first time, it opens in Essentials mode and it doesn't have all the useful tools on the toolbar at the top. So if you go to Essentials Classic, you will find all the useful tools at the top and settings, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is get over to the Shape tool. So about 5 down on your tool menu, depending on how it's presented, you will find a tool that has a rectangle. That's the Shape tool. Now if you hover over the corner, there's a kind of little grey corner there, and 2-finger tap, you will see, 2-finger tap if you're using a trackpad, right click if you're using a mouse. You'll see a selection of different tools. So let's use the rounded rectangle tool to create the handle for the magnifying glass. So I can click and drag to draw the shape on my workspace, and when I'm happy with the aspect ratio and size, I can just release. Okay, so then I have my shape. Notice my cursor is still in the shape mode. So if I wanted to select the current shape, I'd need to go back to the select tool. So you can hit V on your keyboard. If you notice, when I did that, the cursor has now gone to the black arrowhead, which is the selection tool. Once I've done that, I can actually make adjustments to my shape. I can move my shape. I'm going to click on the path and move it around. Okay, and one other great thing, I'm just going to make this bigger so you can see better, about the rounded rectangle tool is that you can very easily change how rounded the corners are just by grabbing this white circle with a black circle inside. You'll find one in each corner. You can grab any one of those and you can drag and change. And here's a little secret tip as well. If you use the direct select tool, that's the select tool that only selects parts of the design. So go to your direct select tool. I hit A on my keyboard, but you can also go to the direct select tool here. If I grab one of these, you sometimes have to click it twice. There we go. I can change just that corner. Okay, can you see that? Pretty cool, huh? Okay, so I'm just going to click undo because I want all my corners the same for this particular shape. I'm going to go hit V, go back to my select tool. and then resize my object accordingly. Perhaps make those corners a little bit less round. Make my handle look a bit more like a handle. Play around with that until I am happy. Okay, that will do. Right, so we are ready for the next shape. So you can go back to the tool. You can either click and hold or two-finger tap to bring out the additional tool menu. So two-finger tap, there's the rectangle tool, and then click and drag and drop when you're ready. Okay, next let's do the circle for the actual lens of the magnifying glass. Now I'm going to show you two tips when using the ellipse tool. So it's called the ellipse tool to draw circles. Okay, two tips. So generally when you draw a circle, it will kind of grow and the central point will move as you click and drag. So you can see the center, keep your eye on the center of the circle and see how that's moving across the workspace. That could be a bit of a pain if I wanted to say have the center of the circle aligned exactly with my other elements. So you can see it's moving around. I don't want that to happen. So I can avoid that happening by pressing the Option key. And now the center of my circle is fixed and I can drag and resize my circle accordingly. Now one other problem that I've still got is as I'm dragging my circle, it's not always moving height and width at the same time, so it can get squashed and distorted. Now if I hold down the Shift key, it will make sure that both height and width grow equally so the circle remains a perfect circle. So right now I have one finger on the Shift key, one finger on the Option key, and I'm clicking and dragging the circle so I can drag it to whatever size I would like from a magnifying glass. Now I'm going to release my fingers, but whilst keeping my fingers on the the Shift and the Options key, because if I lift those off first, I'm going to lose that shape that I had. So I'm going to release my hands off the mouse while still holding down the Shift and the Option key. Okay, so that is a tip for drawing perfect circles. So let's just move these two over. While I'm moving these two over, I'm just going to show you how to select two items. So click on one item, hold down Shift, click on the other item. Now, two ways to move: click and drag, that's one way to move, or hold down Shift and use your arrow keys, and that keeps it moving in the exact plane. So I can move those two out of the way. Now I'm going to focus on the circle. So I want to create a circle within a circle to show the kind of the glass lens part of the magnifying glass. So to get a smaller circle within this circle for the lens, I can copy the circle I'm using now. So I'm going to do Command C. And instead of saying Command V, which is the regular paste instructions, I'm going to use a special paste instruction called Command F, and that stands for paste in front. So it doesn't look like anything's happened at the moment, but I actually have two circles, one directly in front of the other. And I'm going to now change the circle that's on top to be smaller, and I'm going to use the scale tool. So I'm going to press S and then enter on my keyboard, and that's brought up the scale dialog box. Now I'm going to shrink my circle, so I'm going to put 80% and click OK. As you can see, that circle that was on top is still on top, but now it's 80% smaller. So you can see I have one circle and two circles. So now I have the frame and the lens. Okay, so let's say now I want to start putting my elements together. I can start to drag and position the handle and the neck. And if I select both of these objects by dragging over the lines of both of them, I can now select and drag and move my lens. Now I want the neck to be behind the handle, so there's two ways you can do this. When it's selected, you can either two-finger tap on your trackpad or right-click, and that brings up this dialog box. And we're going to go down to Arrange and then Center Back. And as you can see, that particular object is now at the back. So I'm just going to undo that and show you another way to do it. Okay, so at the moment we've been working in one lane. Start again. At the moment we have been working in one layer. So we have the current shapes all in layer 1. So this is the neck of the magnifying glass. If I drag that layer to the bottom, it arranges it at the bottom. So it's exactly the same effect as the last process, but just two different ways of moving an object to the bottom of your sort of design pile. Okay. So next, let's look at colour. So on the worksheet that I have prepared for you, I have, let's just see if we can go to Word, provided a section on colour. So let's go to this section here. And I'm showing you how you can actually colour in objects. And I've also provided for you a selection of hex colours, so yours can be exactly like mine. So let's do the lens. So I'm going to copy and paste the hex code for the teal and go back. Okay, so then if I click on the fill colour, so I'm double clicking on the square that's on top, I can then overtype the current colour by pressing Command V for paste and clicking OK. And I want to do the same thing with the stroke as well. So there's a stroke colour on this one. So I'm going to go Control Copy, back to Illustrator, double click on the stroke. So this is the square with the hole in the middle. That indicates it's the stroke or the outline. So I'm going to double click on that, overtype the current colour, which is black. I'm going to overtype that with a nice blue, click OK, and then I have the fill colour and stroke colour for the lens. Okay, so I can do the same thing with the handle. So I'm going to copy the fill colour, which we're going to use for the handle, and Control Tab back to Illustrator, click on the handle, double click to bring up the colour picker, highlight, delete, add the new colour, and I'm going to remove this. So to remove it, to have no stroke, you can click here and click no stroke. Okay, so now I've removed the black outline. Okay, now here's a quick tip if you want to copy the exact colour profile of another object. So if you want to copy the fill colour and the stroke colour and the thickness of the stroke outline, if there is one, you select the object that you would like to work on, you press I for ink dropper tool, and then you point to the object you want to copy. Okay, so let's do the same thing again with the neck. First of all, we need to select it. I'm pressing V, getting my direct select tool back, clicking the neck, then I'm going to press I, get the ink dropper tool back, click the object I would like to copy. Okay, so now I have all three objects with exactly the same fill and stroke. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring a little bit of life to the lens by creating an effect that hopefully will tell the reader that there's some curvature and some light reflection. And we're going to do this using the line arc tool. So first of all, I'm going to name this layer before I move on to making a new one. I'm going to name it magnifying glass, and then I'm going to open a new layer. And this layer I'm going to call lens shine. Okay, now I can lock that layer for a second to make sure I don't accidentally grab my lens. And now I'm going to go to the line tool. I'm going to select arc tool. And now, let's see what color I want to be in. I want to have a stroke of white, which is all the F's, and I don't want a fill, so I'm going to get rid of my fill. So now when I draw the arc, to use the arc tool, if I hold down shift, it will keep the line at a perfect 90-degree angle, and if I let go, oops, cancel, there it is, a white arc. So you can do that again, or you can just say copy, and you can press Control F for in front. And now another handy tool tip, and we'll be doing this again with other designs. If you two-finger click or right-click on your object to bring up your menu, and then I want you to go to Transform and then Reflect. Now we can reflect either horizontally or vertically. I want to reflect vertically this time. It doesn't really matter whether it's such a circle line. Okay, and then I can use this, I can rotate. It's completely up to you, but it's just a really handy way if you want to use an object again and you want to sort of reflect it and have the opposite object. You can do that. And you can also resize the object again if you want to make it bigger or smaller. So now we have our little white lines to indicate that there's a bit of curvature and a bit of light reflection. So it's brought a little depth to the lens. We can also experiment with making the lines thicker so they're a little bit more visible. So just to recap, I selected both. So select one, hold down Shift, select the other, go to the stroke thickness and select an appropriate or experiment with different line thicknesses to see how you like the look. Okay, I think 3 look quite nice, so I'm just going to take that back, select, Shift, select, and leave that at 3. Lovely. Okay, so I'm going to put those 2 items in a group together. So I'm selecting both, Command G. So my lens shine is grouped together now. So I'm just going to unlock the magnifying glass. I'm happy that everything is as I want it to be at this point. So I'm going to select everything by clicking and dragging a marquee over, and everything is selected. Now, as you can see, I have a bounding box around that covers sort of the furthest width and height of the object. Now, if I hover my mouse around the corners of the bounding box, the arrows change. So this is my resizing. So if I wanted to resize, I could accidentally squish my design. I could hold down Shift to make sure it resizes by both height and width at the same time. But I don't want to resize at this point. I want to rotate. So I can take any corner and hover until I have the rotate arrows and then rotate at an angle. Okay. Now, again, the Shift key comes in very useful. If I wanted to rotate at an angle of 45 degrees, I go to what I think is approximately 45 degrees and then hold down Shift. And as you can see, the illustrator corrects my alignment to exactly 45 degrees. And if I wanted it somewhere between, again, I can just about get that right. I might be able to, it's just doing the 45 degree angle today. With some lines, it will sometimes let you do an 1/8 of a rotation. But today we are just working in a 45 degree rotation. So Illustrator will correct us and make sure that we are within 45 degrees. So you can either free rotate or use the Shift tool. So I'm going to go, about 135 degrees. So that's sort of 3 turns of a 4-turn circle. Okay, now I'm just going to drag my shape somewhere into the middle of the page. Okay, so we have rotated our magnifying glass. Now I'm going to add a question mark to help the reader understand that this is a symbol of searching or exploring. So I'm going to add a new layer, and I'm going to call this layer question mark. Okay, press return, that's good. Now working my question mark layer, I'm going to just lock the other 2 layers again so I don't accidentally select them. And then I'm going to use the type tool. So you can either click on the type tool or press T on your keyboard as a shortcut. And approximately where you'd like to type, just click. Now you'll notice that lorem ipsum has appeared on the screen. Now this is just filler text, it's temporary text, just so you know where you are, what size you are, etc. So I just want a question mark, and as you can see at the moment that is very, very, very small. So I might want to make that bigger, and I think I want it to be white, so I'm going to double click on the fill, put in all the F's, F, click OK. I want a more interesting typeface, so I think I'm going to go for, I think it was American typewriter. There we go, a nice curly question mark. Now before I can reposition my question mark, I need to press escape, and that takes me out of the typing mode, so then I can direct select, which allows me to move, okay? If you press V, you'll end up typing the letter V, so always press escape before you can get back to your select tool. Now I think that could still do with being a bit bigger, so I'm just going to over type and make that 100. Maybe a little bit bigger still. Let's go for 120. Yeah, I'll do. Okay, so again, I can scroll out. I'm going to press escape. I'll make sure I've got my select tool. Illustrator's helping me to align. You see that little alignment guide, and release. Okay, and there we have it. There we have a very basic magnifying glass that you can use as an icon. In part 2, we're going to look at adding some effects to give our magnifying glass some depth using some flat design sort of principles. So I will see you in activity part 2.